Dear all, I think we can start now. Welcome, dear friends and colleagues. Welcome to the digital event Energy in Slovenia, Slovenian Presidency of the Council of the EU 2021. My name is Anna Vučina-Vršnak. I'm the assistant to the executive director of the Energy Industry Chamber of Slovenia, Mr. Anton Colarič, who is also here with us today, and I will moderate this event. We hope you all feel all right, no matter if there is 10 or 20 or 30 degrees from where you're watching us. In Slovenia, we are now experiencing yet another heat wave, having 35 degrees today, but we are all comfortably sitting in our offices. We have speakers and participants from all over the world, which proves that the presidency of the EU Council attracts a lot of attention. I will now also share my PowerPoint presentation. I hope you can see it. As you can see, sunny day in Ljubljana. Now, our Energy Industry Chamber is located in this building. For those who do not know us, our chamber is an autonomous, voluntary interest and not-for-profit association, and we are proud to bring a piece of the Slovenian energy to your countries. By connecting the energy organizations in the framework of 6 sections within chamber, we are creating a common vision for advanced low-carbon society. Our members are energy companies of all sizes, among them energy producers and distributors, gas and electricity market operators, academic institutions, as well as SMEs. And our Energy Industry Chamber itself is a member of 4 international organizations: the Euroelectric, the European Forum for Energy Business Information Exchange, EBICS, the International Association for Energy Economics, and World Energy Council. I'm delighted to welcome the colleagues from the 4 organizations' leadership among us today. Our chamber supports the efforts of countries, industry, civil society, and individuals in the fight against climate change. The Paris Agreement and the European Green Deal are, of course, the cornerstones of our common fight against climate change, and we recognize that the energy sector has an important role to play here. We are aware that the transition to a low-carbon and climate-neutral circular economy in Slovenia requires coordinated action by the government, as well as numerous stakeholders from all sectors of the economy. What is the main objective of today's event? It is to present the Slovenian Presidency of the Council of the EU, which started last Thursday, 1st of July, to our already well-informed audience. The main focus will be, of course, on the energy-related issues presented by the State Secretary at the Ministry of Infrastructure, Mr. Blaž Košorok. We are delighted to have him with us today. We also want to bring to you a piece of energy from our capital, Ljubljana. Hence, the director of the Agency for the Cooperation of Energy Regulators, ACER, Mr. Christian Zinglersen, is also here with us. We are very honored to welcome 2 Slovenian members of the European Parliament who know a great deal about energy topics, Mr. Klemen Grošelj, Renew Europe, and Mr. Franz Bogovič, EPP. Finally, because we promote the energy dialogue at all levels, we have invited dear friends from our 4 already mentioned partner organizations: Christian Rubi, Secretary General of Euroelectric, Mrs. Vladka Cordes and Lucy Sarkisian, Chair from EBICS, Professor James A. Smith from the IAEE will join us on the video because of the time lag, and Dr. Angela Wilkinson, Secretary General, World Energy Council. We know you all are eagerly awaiting the Fit for 55 package next week, and I'm sure our State Secretary will share some thoughts on it. The event is expected to last about 2 hours. We'll do our best to finish in 2 hours. Of course, we will be very happy to take questions, So my dear guests, dear colleagues, dear journalists, you are very welcome to ask question or post any commentary. Please type a message or question into the chat box and we'll take the questions as we go. Now, the first speaker today is Mr. Marjan Eberlinc, the president of the Energy Industry Chamber of Slovenia, also the CEO of Plinovodi, which is gas transmission system operator here in Slovenia. He's been the president of our chamber since 2010, serving now his third term. Mr. Eberlinc is also a member of the Slovenian Chamber of Engineers, a member of the International Gas Union, and was also a board member of the European Network of Transmission System Operators for Gas. Mr. Marjan Eberlinc, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Anna. Ladies and gentlemen, the Energy Industry Chamber of Slovenia is proud to host a digital event for such a distinguished group of experts, professors, managers, politicians, and also journalists. Indeed, by connecting the energy organizations, we are creating common vision for advanced low-carbon Slovenian society. They say green is new black, but I wish the green option would have always been in fashion. We are living in a special moment. Climate change is happening before our eyes. Everyone needs to act. We can surely be proud of small individual action, but we need structural changes as well. First, what is the role of the energy sector? As the International Energy Agency stressed in the latest reports, the world has a viable pathway to building global energy sector with net zero emissions in 2050, but this path is narrow and requires unprecedented transformation of how energy is produced, transported, and used globally. Priority actions are needed today and require immediate massive deployment of all available clean and efficient energy technologies, combined with a major global push to accelerate innovation. I'm proud to inform you that we, at the Chamber, have conducted an analysis that revealed that the Slovenian energy companies, member of our Chamber, are ready to invest in a number of projects in the area of renewables, energy efficiency, smart grids, lowering the emissions. Not only did our analysis show that the energy companies are planning green investment worth €4 billion in the financial framework 21-27. The analysis also clearly demonstrated that the Slovenian energy companies have prepared projects which are ready to go worth €1.25 billion. The realization of an array of ideas will bring us closer to the green future. There is a long way ahead of us. This decade from 2020 to 2030 will be crucial. We are not reducing the CO2 emissions with the existing technologies. However, in 2050, almost half the reductions will come from technologies which are currently only at the demonstration or prototype phase. This demands that all players in the energy field quickly increase their spending on research and development and demonstrating and deploying clean energy technologies. The trends that define the green future are decarbonization, digitalization, decentralization, and cross-sector cooperation. Of course, the progress is not possible without the effort of citizens, meaning of all of us. Europeans seem to be very concerned about climate change. They support measures to mitigate climate change according to Eurobarometer survey. If green is the new black, I truly hope that each and every one of us will act in this very fashionable manner now and every day in the future. It really doesn't matter if you wear a bright green dress or black t-shirt as long as a Green Deal is written all over it. Dear friends and colleagues from abroad, we are bringing to you a piece of Slovenian energy today. Enjoy your webinar. Anna.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Eberlinc. You pointed out that priority actions are needed today. and that this decade from 2020 to 2030 will be crucial. Precisely in this crucial time, we at the Chamber have decided to launch a book on the state of the energy industry, its course and its challenges. Slovenia can be proud of its reliable energy supply in the last decades. However, serious challenges lay ahead. The public debate on energy issues, and in particular on the future of energy in Slovenia, is very narrow and not comprehensive at all. That is why we were very happy to receive a positive feedback on the book, in a sense that it contributes to a comprehensive debate which is based on facts. Let me now give you a brief overview of the energy in Slovenia. On sustainability first, according to the World Energy Council's definition of energy sustainability, based on 3 core dimensions, as you can see them on the slide: energy security, energy equity, and environmental sustainability. Slovenia has always ranked among the best in the world. In 2020 report, Slovenia ranked 14th among 128 states. 1 year earlier, in 2019, it ranked 12th and was also among top 10 in energy security, for example. On electricity production, most of electricity used in Slovenia is produced by local power plants. The production comes from hydropower plants, thermal power plants, and from a nuclear power plant located in Krško, southeast Slovenia. In 2019, locally produced electricity covered roughly 83% of the electricity demand, while last year in 2020, this share increased to 93%. Given that hydropower plants play a major role in Slovenian electricity production, the total domestic production is highly dependent on hydrological conditions in a given period. Moving to the import dependency in general, to meet the energy needs of both households and industrial consumers, Slovenia does not have enough of its own energy sources and therefore must rely on energy imports. Country's import dependency has fluctuated between 43% and 53% over the last 20 years, meaning that Slovenia roughly imports half of its energy needs. And of course, we are talking about natural gas and oil. Now, in short, half of energy sources are imported, but most of the electricity is produced domestically. As far as electricity supply is concerned, 1/3 comes from coal, 1/3 from the water, and 1/3 from nuclear. As you can see here, a very good balance indeed. It seems that the book Energy in Slovenia was launched at a perfect time. Let me explain why. Despite a very balanced electricity production, the share of energy from renewables in gross final energy consumption compared to Slovenia's potential is still relatively low. In 2019, the share of renewable was 22% in comparison to 21% in 2010, which means that Slovenia has missed the target of 25% of renewables in 2020. But as the president of our chamber said, the energy companies are ready to invest in a number of projects in the area of renewables, energy efficiency, smart grids, lowering the emissions. As an example, we are happy to announce that in October last year, a concession agreement was signed for the exploitation of the hydro potential on the Middle Sava River. By exploiting the entire potential, 1 terawatt-hour of electricity from renewable sources would be gained. As you can see here on the map of Slovenia, where you can also see the Sava River, the project is based on the chain of 9 to 12 new hydropower plants, which will increase the current electricity production in Slovenia for almost 10%. Another example of the projects on the ground, the company holding Slovenske elektrarne just now started building the largest solar power plant in Slovenia. As Mr. Eberlins explained, in this moment, there are numerous projects on the ground ready to get started in relation to solar, hydro, heat pumps, biogases, even waste to energy. Moreover, there are smart grid projects on the way. Now, in the second part of the book, we focus on limitations and wider context in relation to energy in Slovenia. Of course, we talk about the already mentioned import dependency. We consider and we analyze the emissions from transport, which is a huge big deal here in Slovenia because Slovenia is a transit country, and you can imagine that the share of emissions is the highest in the transport sector. Next on the list is closure of coal mines and thermal power plants. Also the challenge not only Slovenia is facing, but other EU members and other countries around the globe as well. If Slovenia, or let me put it in this way, when Slovenia closes its biggest thermal power plant in Šoštanj, this would actually mean minus 1/3 of its electricity production today. Then we exploit the nuclear energy, further exploitation of renewables, energy efficiency, and so on. Now, in this second part of the book, we wanted to present the energy sector in Slovenia in a broader picture of long-term environmental and climate policies. Our chamber has emphasized the importance of energy self-sufficiency. We have been warning that it will be difficult to achieve energy security and decarbonization goals without new investment in renewables. We would also like to point out that society needs to take a stand on all types of energy so that energy companies are able to prepare the basis for investment decisions today and in the future. We are also in favor of Slovenia achieving the highest possible degree of energy self-sufficiency in electricity production. We are in favor of using the energy sources available to us. And finally, we are in favor of using domestic sources of knowledge. Our chamber has been focused lately on the energy transition and the support from the EU funds. In December 2020, the chamber established the Energy Transition and EU Funds Group to work with the authorities responsible for receiving EU funds. A special thanks here goes to Mr. State Secretary Blaž Košorok, who understood the importance of the investment needs on the ground, which is now reflected also in the National Plan for Resilience and Recovery. You can see it here on the slide, although it's in Slovenia, everyone recognizes the pie chart, and you can see the green, the kiwi or the pistachio part, which is meant for the green goals, and Slovenia will dedicate more than €1 billion to this goal. Now, our goal at the chamber is that the green projects, the green energy projects would receive maximum possible support from the EU funds and various European programs in the period 21 to 27. Since the European Commission gave the green light to Slovenia's plan for resilience and recovery last week, the group will focus on the cohesion programs in autumn. Now, to sum up, it is obvious that the challenges are numerous. As our president pointed out, there is a long way ahead of us. I truly hope you got the glimpse of the energy in Slovenia. I will end my presentation with two quotes that are written at the beginning of the book. One is from the 7-year-old boy who said that energy is what gives you strength. And another one is from a famous lady, Eleanor Roosevelt, who said, "It takes as much energy to wish as it does to plan." I hope that not only Slovenia, but the EU of 27 member states and the whole world would have enough strength to plan a bright green future for us all. Thank you. Now it's the time for the Slovenian presidency of the Council of the EU. I'm all excited. It all officially started last Thursday, as I said, 1st of July, but it is more than clear that preparation started a long time ago. The general priorities in the field of energy, the events, files, will be presented by the State Secretary at the Ministry of Infrastructure, Mr. Blaž Košorok. We are delighted to have him here with us today. I hope you are with us, Mr. Košorok.
I am.
Oh, good, great. State Secretary Košorok is a true expert in energy-related issues. He was at the helm of some of the biggest energy companies in Slovenia. He knows the facts and he is also aware of the challenges. Mr. State Secretary, the floor is now yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Anna, for giving me the floor. I would like to give also very kind regards from Ministry of Infrastructure, especially to Mr. Zinglersen and to both our MP, Member of Parliament, Dr. Grošelj, and of course, Mr. Bobovic, and also President Eberlin. Hello to everybody, to all other speakers and all the ladies and gentlemen that are now hearing us. Unfortunately, we cannot meet in person, but okay, this is a way that we are used now. We'll give you, just like Anna said, a brief, let's say briefly, what our general priorities are and what are the events during our presidency to the Council of the EU for the next 6 months. So general priorities of our presidency will more or less focus on the sustainability, the 4 pillars: climate neutrality, energy transition, and of course, circular economy. This is something that goes hand in hand with our second ministry, Ministry of Environmental and Spatial Planning. So let me stress at the beginning that Slovenia fully supports the climate neutrality goal by 2050. And of course, 55% reduction of the emission of the greenhouse gas emissions. So by EU level by 2030. So at the same time, we will focus and of course remain on the recovery on the pandemic crisis. This is also one of our top priority during our presidency. I will briefly explain you what the events will be during our presidency, but at the end. So all the files that are, as far as we are now looking at, are more detailed. And I can confirm that we will focus all our efforts firstly on the TNE regulation, but all eyes, so to say, are now focused on next Wednesday, on the 14th of July, when the now long announced package Fit for 55 will see the bright of the day. So what will be, what and how will be this Fit for 55? It's more or less guarded by like a top secret. Nobody knows. I tried to get some kind of information for today's meeting, but they are really guarding top priority and top secret. So maybe just jump to 10A regulation. As far as I know, I mean, as also you know, the Council has reached a general approach on this file. And of course, we plan to continue the process with the European Parliament. It is clear that the European Parliament will be split on the issue on gas, not unlike the Council. And negotiations with the European Parliament will be quite difficult. We expect to spend a lot on effort and time on this file. So maybe jumping to the Fit for 55 package, there are 2 issues regarding energy sector, or there are some more for the transport sector, but let's stick to the energy sector. There is renewables directive, which is quite important also for Slovenia, and energy efficiency directive. So as I spoke to many now, let's say, colleagues from around the Europe, we expect this will be a long process, and to be also difficult examinations and also split council on these issues. There are a lot of details regarding the files, and they are linked to difficulties with the member states they're encountering on the ground when also implementing the legislation. Imagine all the translation in different languages will also take some time, and this is something that we expect to be a bumpy road ahead of us. So in addition, as you might expect, a number of member states are not happy to be looking into the changes so close in the deadline for the transposition. This was by end of last month. Many find increasing the targets hard to accept, and they have already stretched their plans for the current national energy and climate plans and existing 2030 targets. So I know this is implicit in the agreement in the climate law, but member states really do need flexibility in reaching the objective. So in the meanwhile, as you know, Portuguese presidency ended the process together with Commission and Parliament. So the European climate law will be passed. So nevertheless, we need to devote a lot of our time for the understanding, of course, the first time, and then on the second for the examination, all the proposals from different member states. And in the view of the extreme time constraints, meaning we have 6 months, we're looking to deliver at the end of our presidency so-called progress report on both files in the December Council of our presidency. You mentioned also coal phase out will be something that we will also address. I can, of course, here speak only of the national issues. As you mentioned also, and it's also mentioned in your book, we are in the final phase of adopting the strategy on just transition and the year of when the coal phase out will happen in Slovenia. So, but we should have a strategy adopted by the government, and as far as I know, this will be done in summer, maybe beginning of autumn this year. Currently, we are debating the year 2033 as the year for the coal-fired power plant Šoštanj and the coal mine Velenje to cease their activities. It is quite a hot issue now in Slovenia. We had many meetings with the unions, with the local communities, also with the government, and let's say the locals and the unions are very much against the coal phase out process in general, but as we are concerned, as our minister is concerned, we are confident to find a mutual solution on that issue as well. So we have done this together with the Commission, many meetings with the Commission we had, and their help in guiding this process was really a constructive, and they were very engaged. Maybe to talk a little bit about an issue which is also quite interesting these days is hydrogen. This topic is more or less always connected to the choice of energy used to produce this hydrogen. It is essential that we keep in mind the final goal of us, and this is to decarbonize the economy, and that the hydrogen is one of the components to do that. We will focus, or we should focus, on low carbon technologies to provide hydrogen, and also on this issue, different member states have different pathways, plans, circumstances, and we should aim at being the most efficient, ensuring the decarbonization in our energy systems, which means that one size fits all is nothing cannot fit. I also want to stress that we support the development of hydrogen from renewables, but we think that limiting ourselves to this is too narrow, and much more production of hydrogen will be needed to decarbonize in what can be produced from renewables. Indeed, this expected increase in hydrogen production from renewables has to be taken into account also when planning renewables capacities. The last third of your energy mixture was, I believe, nuclear. To achieve all the climate neutrality by 2050, we are committed to increase also our climate ambition. You also mentioned that, I believe to the end of this month, our parliament will pass the resolution on long-term strategy for decarbonization of Slovenia by 2050. And this will be the first strategic document in which it will be mentioned that we will go into the phase of building the second unit of nuclear power plant in Krško. As you know, in Europe, I believe there are more than 100, 107 to be exact, nuclear power plants operating across 13 member states, producing more than 25% of all the electricity produced in the European Union. So it is the largest low carbon electricity production source in Europe. As for Slovenia, this is, as you mentioned, 1/3 of our electricity production. The contribution of the nuclear energy to fight against the climate change is recognized by the major international organizations such as EEA, OECD, and they all agree that the nuclear power must continue to be part of the global energy mix. And this is the strong position also from Slovenian side. Otherwise, I believe the decarbonization objectives cannot be achieved. So even the European Parliament in its resolution on COP25 adopted in, I believe, November 2019, stated that all technologies, including nuclear, are needed to combat climate change. For Slovenia, of course, all our modeling, which was done this year, is telling us that nuclear will most likely have to be part of our energy mix to achieve the decarbonization. To address the significant investment needs, public and private finance have to be mobilized. Therefore, some positive signals have to be sent to the investors to also to stimulate a little bit the investments required to produce decarbonized electricity, particularly in the area such as nuclear. This has to be, of course, clearly recognized by the Commission, not just superficially, as the choice of the energy mix remains a national responsibility, which is stated in the Lisbon Treaty. But the Commission should, the very last, refrain from making negative remarks regarding this choice. So this was clearly articulated in the letter sent by many numbers of heads of state and government to the Commission, so-called like-minded states on this issue. So a little bit to wrap up our events, which are all you are kindly invited. As regards the calendar, we are planning to have 2 informal Energy Council meetings. One is for energy and second is for the transport. This will be done in late September, to be exact 21st and 22nd of September. Part of the informal meetings will be dedicated to the energy only issues, focused on few issues from the Fit for 55. There will be a presentation regarding these files. And also, there will be a joint session with energy and transport ministers on sustainable mobility, mostly focused on electrification of the transport along with the alternatives fuel. We believe that transport and energy sector on these issues goes hand in hand. The usual formal meetings on energy ministries is planned as usual by the end of the presidency, meaning by the end of the year, namely on the 2nd of December. We will address all the usual topics, the open legislative proposal, possible presentation of the new proposal on gas decarbonization, methane, and some other international issues. So I hope to be able to announce that an agreement between the Parliament and the Council will be reached on before mentioned 10E regulation. The plan is also depends on when the Commission will present the new proposal. It is scheduled for the Q4. We also plan to host a set plan conference by the end of November, 25th and 26th of November. So to wrap it up, our general priorities of our presidency will focus on sustainability, climate neutrality, energy transition, and circular economy. And of course, focus will remain on recovery after the pandemic. And yeah, let's see what next Wednesday will bring us with the package Fit for 55. So thank you for your attention, and thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much, Mr. State Secretary. Now, it doesn't hurt if I repeat. It is nice to hear that the general priorities of our presidency will focus on sustainability, climate neutrality, energy transition, and circular economy. As far as this famous Fit for 55 package is concerned, you mentioned a difficult road ahead and a split council. You also stressed that member states really do need flexibility in reaching the objectives. What are your expectations here? I also kindly invite others to write down the questions.
We had some informal talks with our colleagues from different member states. And as I said, we expect this road not to be easy, to be a little bit bumpy. There are different countries, different occasions. Of course, everybody is looking at their own energy sector. And that's, I firmly believe that Slovenia will be a honest broker on so to call it, on to putting together all the different needs, all the different demands from different countries. And, but to say anything, let's say more firmer at that moment, even 1 week before these files will come up, it's maybe just a speculation. But what we can hear from the Commission, not only on energy sector but also on the transport sector, is something that we will have to put a lot of effort on. We are fortunate, from the 12 files, from the 12 dossiers, we will get 5. 3 on transport and 2 on energy sector. And we know that also on the transport sector, there will be some difficulties. There are 2 dossiers. One is refuel maritime, and the second one is refuel aviation. And there are 2 or 3 member states which are now, let's say, pointing out that it will be a bumpy road.
It seems it definitely will be, as you said, that everything is top secret. Now, another question for you. You explained that for Slovenia, the modeling is telling you that nuclear will most likely have to be a part of Slovenian energy mix to achieve decarbonization. Do you see any particular hurdles as far as the public opinion in Slovenia is concerned?
I mean, we live for the last 50 years. We had a successful, more than 40 years successful operation of the nuclear power plant. Slovenians are more or less used to the nuclear power plant. This is something, of course, we will have to persuade our domestic public and media and so on that this is something that is needed in Slovenia for the next 50 or 60 years. I'm speaking about the second unit in Krško, also about the extension of the lifetime of the first unit in Krško. This is now also the topic that we didn't mention. Colleagues from Krško are now planning to extend the lifetime for the next 20 years. And also in this matter, there is a long way ahead of us, of a lot of persuasion, probably a referendum, probably a lot of issues regarding our friends from the neighboring states, not only Austria, but maybe Italy, maybe Luxembourg, maybe Belgium, that, as you know, they are against the nuclear and so on. But we are prepared. We are now preparing a strategy regarding that, how to put that in place, how to follow the project. And yes, I'm looking forward for this project because it's quite demanding. It's financially it will be quite high. Probably not possible just only for one state to cover the expenses and so on. This is something that we will build for the next 80 years probably. Together, of course, with the energy mixture that we already have, together with the renewables. So not forget the renewables. Speaking of renewables, solar, wind, of course, and hydro, and geothermal as well.
We will come back to the nuclear energy later on, when our member of the European Parliament, Mr. Franz Bogovic, will join us. He's actually former mayor of Krško, where the nuclear plant is located, right? Now we have one question from the audience. Hasmik Persekian is asking, is the focus of emission reduction and decarbonization on the EU or on the larger Europe as well? He or she has in mind the neighborhood. of the EU. So are we talking about the emission reduction and decarbonization only for the EU or broader Europe, let's say?
Firstly, we will focus on European Union, but of course, we have in mind also broader Europe. If you have in mind Western Balkans, of course, there is some dossiers regarding the carbon allocation at the border. What to do with that? Not to import, let's say, so to call cheap energy from the Western Balkans. Yes, and we also have in mind the broader European let's say territory as such.
Thank you so much. I hope you have answered the question. If there are other questions, you have 10 seconds to write it down. Otherwise, we continue. Yes. The participant was very happy with your answer, Mr. Košorok.
May I add something?
Please introduce yourself.
It's me, Klemen Groscher. Can I add something on the neighborhood?
Yes, please.
So, as you may know, the European Parliament has passed several resolutions regarding the Southeast Europe and the Southeastern neighborhood, and in all of those resolutions, there was clear pointed out demand that the neighboring countries need to follow in energy sectors all the set targets in the European Union. And as you know, there is the carbon border adjustment mechanism coming, and it will be one of the pillars of the forthcoming Fit for 55 mechanism. So this is one of the ideas I will explain a little bit more on in my speech. But nevertheless, this point, it's important to say that this is the so-called part of this carbon leakage, and so that even if they are not formal members, you can see the bright example of Norway. They are already following, or even they are beyond the targets set by the European Union. So it's not only the European Union, also it is also the neighboring countries. So just a small comment. Thank you.
Thank you for your intervention, Mr. Košorok. Do you have anything to add?
No, thank you, Dr. Groscher. Thank you for adding that up. It's you are quite right. I mean, this is something that we also, this is not only the solution, but we shall follow that, especially what you said regarding the carbon pricing, the carbon allocation and so on borders. And yeah, thank you.
Maybe just one last question, Mr. Košorok, for you. Beside nuclear, you also mentioned coal phase out, right? And you said that also it's a hot topic in Slovenia, of course. How do you envisage, or how do you expect the reactions also from other member states who also have this burden on their shoulders, you know, coal phase out, meaning that?
I mentioned that as a national issue, not as a European issue, not to be part of the presidency.
Exactly.
But it's a national issue. I think that besides us, there are 4 or 5 member states who didn't reach or didn't put the targets on the year when the phase out will happen, meaning that we are running a little out of time, especially with the Just Transition Fund, especially with the financing the coal phase out, which must be or shall be just, especially for the employees. On one side on the power plants, and the second on the coal mine. Having in mind all the financial situation in EICS, a group of which is the largest utility company in Slovenia, with the carbon pricing, which will only rise, we have to do something very fast.
Mm-hmm.
There is, as saying at the beginning, we live in demanding, in interesting times, and there is no time anymore to wait and to reconsider what to do. But on the other side, for the last 40 years, we have never been in such a situation that with the coal phase out, meaning that 1/3 of Slovenian production of electricity will stop, and we have only maybe 10-15 years to do something in our production sector, producing electricity, and to replace this 1/3. How we will do it? Probably with a natural gas as something in the between, and then of course with the renewables and with the nuclear. So I see natural gas as a, let's say, middle room for the path to the decarbonization of Slovenia.
As a transition energy, yes. Thank you so much, State Secretary. Thank you so much indeed. We wish you every success in the presidency.
Thank you.
We know you have to catch a plane today to Brussels, but if you still have some time, you are more than welcome to listen now to the next presentation. We now go to the main, one of the main squares in Ljubljana, the Square of the Republic. As I said in the introduction, we want to bring to you a piece of energy from our capital, Ljubljana. And here on this square, Slovenia's Statehood Day was celebrated on 25th June to commemorate 25th June 1991, when Slovenia officially gained its independence. Thus, Slovenia just marked the 30 years of its independence. We are proud and happy. The ceremony was also an occasion to celebrate the start of Slovenia's EU presidency. And as I said, the ceremony took place on this Square of the Republic, where the Agency for the Cooperation of Energy Regulators, ACER, is located. You can see the building on the right. ACER's director, Mr. Christian Zinglersen, is here today with us. Mr. Zinglersen, are you
yes,
here?
indeed. Yes, indeed, Anna. Can you hear me well?
Yes, very well. Thank you so much for joining us. Of course, my first question for you would be, what are your expectations from the Slovenian presidency? And later on, what are the most important topics for ACER in the second half of this year?
Yes, thanks a lot, Anna. And yeah, congratulations on Statehood Day. What a wonderful photo, by the way, that you have put in front of us. I will try to tackle your questions in a 10-11 minute presentation, which we put together. Let me thank you first of all for the invitation to participate right after State Secretary Kosarok, whom I have met several times and will also meet during the course of the presidency. I see this kickoff event as one of the first main external facing kickoff events for the Slovene Council presidency, and we are very happy to participate. Let me just upload my slides. I think maybe you need to close this slide first, and then I will just. Very good, thanks a lot. And let me just see if this works. Otherwise, you can tell me. Let's see. Let me know once you have the full slide. It's all right. Very good.
Great. Yes.
Okay. Thanks a lot. So thanks again for the invitation. It's a pleasure to follow after State Secretary Kosarok. As I said, this is a special kickoff conference or webinar for us in a number of ways. We are the only EU energy agency. We're an energy regulatory agency. This is a different perspective of our headquarters, perhaps slightly less exciting than the picture you just showed. We're also the only EU agency in Slovenia, and indeed this council presidency of our host country comes at the same time as we celebrate our 10-year anniversary as an EU agency. And it comes on top of the 30-year anniversary of your independence. So it's a special occasion, and we want to make the most of it, obviously, contributing where it's possible to the efforts of the Slovene government in this presidency's second half of the year, as it were. And I'll try to go through over the next 8-9 minutes or so some of those areas where we could possibly contribute from our side as ACER, drawing here a bit on some of the highlight items of the Council presidency that indeed State Secretary Kosarok also spoke of. And I'll use these 4 basic quadrants a bit. There is the Fit for 55 package and some of, shall we say, the underlying foundations which make that package possible, if I can put it in those terms. Some of the infrastructure items, or infrastructure classic, but also some of these new areas coming up, not least hydrogen, which the State Secretary also touched upon, something on mobility, and I'll close a bit with cybersecurity, which I don't think figured that prominently in the State Secretary's introduction, but I know is also a horizontal priority of the Council presidency. So that's basically what's in store. And if I start with this first area under this quadrant in the top left corner, and the Fit for 55 package obviously is going to be a big legislative negotiation soon, which we will not take part in as such as an EU agency. However, it's also a comprehensive package with quite a beefed up role, as we hear, for renewables ramp up across Europe. And in that view, in that sense, it also rests on an increasingly integrated, well-functioning energy market in Europe, not least in electricity. And so it rests on the implementation and well-functioning also of the clean energy package, which was decided a few years ago, and the many efforts undertaken both before that package and subsequently. And here we have a clear role as ACER in making that package a success, thereby also solidifying the foundation upon which new further efforts like the Fit for 55 package will ultimately stand. As it were, however, there is quite a bit to do in terms of, shall we say, making that foundation fit for purpose and therefore also fit for this new package coming forward. In part, there are some significant delays in rolling out further market coupling across Europe. And also, this speaks to the slide here, there are also some significant challenges in making the most of what we already have, if I can put it in those terms. And here I mean making the most of electricity trade per the current interconnectors we have here in Europe. You can see here sort of the suboptimal status between current utilization of interconnectors and the red line being this politically adopted 70% target that some of you will be very familiar with. So this will need to dramatically improve in the coming years, because I think indeed without the benefits of massive power trade across the different regions of Europe, it is going to be unlikely that we achieve the massive decarbonization ambitions Europe has set for itself, at least at lower cost. And here there are several efforts to be made with a role for us as ACER, the EU Energy Regulatory Agency. We need to look obviously at further network reinforcement to alleviate congestion. We need to coordinate and also reasonably distribute costs of remedial action that alleviate congestion. And we as ACER, we also have a role that we're tasked with in bringing forth the discussions on bidding zone configurations in Europe as one means among several to enhance efficient power trade across member states. So this is a snapshot of a few of the current challenges in terms of energy market integration, not least power market integration across Europe. And these we'll need to tackle if we are to, as I say, solidify the foundation upon which further efforts like the upcoming Fit for 55 package will stand. Now, at the same time, if we look further ahead and see some of the current visions being discussed, like vast new generation sites pooling resources across many member states, embodying this shared resources model of Europe as we go forward, well, then we will likely need to revisit and update a number of our current approaches as well. And some of these revolve around the interplay of how we produce and transport energy. We may need to look, for example, at how we distribute costs according to the benefits with some of those projects, with less of a territorial fixation, perhaps going forward. Or we may need to reassess how these projects cater for more localized benefit, if indeed that is perceived missing in some areas, perhaps fueling a local opposition to some of these big infrastructure projects going forward. And that brings me to the second quadrant, if you will, related to the Slovene Council presidency highlights, namely the ongoing infrastructure legislative negotiations referred to as the 10E framework, which are currently being discussed between the European Parliament and the Council, and therefore also to be presided over on the Council side by the Slovene government in the next 6 months. This also relates a bit to the soon to come discussions on new decarbonized approaches to gases, or the new gas package, which is likely to come in the fall, which I think there will be some initial discussions on, led by the Slovene government as well. Here, if we look at the current energy infrastructure discussions, we as ACER, we have given lots of input to that over the past months. And it's safe to say here that we face significant challenges today. Those difficulty, I mean, just to give an example, our latest monitoring report of the so-called EU projects of common interest show recurrent delays in the rollout of electricity infrastructure across Europe, and more than 40% of them relate to permitting issues. So these are current challenges that we need to address. Obviously, that is difficult to reconcile with this notion of a very significant scale up in the short term that I think many are of the opinion will be necessary to achieve the decarbonization ambitions of Europe. So something here definitely needs addressing. In addition, we expect, as I said, the Slovene Council Presidency to host sort of early discussions on this future market for decarbonized gases. And one of the key elements here, of course, is the approach to a nascent hydrogen market across Europe. This is something we as ACER are quite involved in, and where in our view, there is a need also to draw lessons from the current natural gas market integration effort in Europe, balancing on the one hand, the potential benefits in getting in early regulation-wise, if I can put it in those terms, so you avoid lock-in effects that are difficult to undo at a later stage. That's one side of the coin. But the other side of the coin, which we also need to balance on the other hand, is the risk of over-regulating in the beginning. This is particularly acute in a fast-moving environment where technology and technology costs and market demand patterns all are evolving quite fast. And so here we as ACER alongside CER, we have put forward our considerations for what we dub sort of a gradual dynamic regulatory approach to this nascent hydrogen market across Europe. We put those forward earlier this year, and we will expand on these considerations in the coming months, hopefully thereby also assisting the Council Presidency in these early discussions, which may be kickstarted towards the tail end of the presidency, as it were. Now, that brings me to the third quadrant of the Council Presidency, namely mobility in a wider sense. And this, of course, is another key societal priority for many, not least for the Slovene government, and therefore also for the Slovene Council Presidency. And this sits at the intersection of energy, climate, and transport, and indeed the wider economy. Here, we as ACER, we would seek to contribute to this intersection by drawing in the different energy aspects, as it were. And we are keen to contribute to that discussion to the extent it's deemed valuable by the Slovene government. And here we want to make sure that energy market configuration acts as a facilitator rather than an obstacle to transport decarbonization. And how then to think about that? Well, if we take a bit of a picture, or we start at the top with a broader overview, it's safe to say that the power mix in Europe, indeed in most parts of the world, will likely undergo very significant changes in the years and indeed decades ahead. And as a result of that new mix, which we see permeating across the world and indeed in Europe already, that mix will be characterized by a lot of intermittent renewable generation, obviously, and that in turn will drive a massive increase in power system flexibility needs. I think that is a safe bet, as it were. Now, therefore, flexibility is key, is going to become key. Flexibility is also many things depending on the time horizon you apply for the provision of flexibility services. And here for electrification of transport, to go back to the mobility issue, there is a strong role for sort of instant flexibility contributions, and also a strong role for flexibility provided, say, over a day period or perhaps a multitude of days, as it were. And here markets can actually play a very important role. And hence a key priority for us as ACER is to monitor and assess any barriers there are to market entry for demand side responsive assets, including those provided by electric vehicle assets in the future. There's a bit of background noise. I wonder if you can maybe mute those who are not speaking. Okay, right. In addition to these flexibility contributions, there's also another aspect which is likely to play an increasing role in how we appreciate demand-side responsiveness, and this is how we assess resource adequacy in the coming years across Europe, and as such, how we assess and ensure security of supply in a fastly changing energy system landscape. And such security of supply in the future is not going to be ensured, at least not in a cost-efficient way, by what I would say is looking backwards, but rather it needs to be ensured cost efficiently by looking forward and hereby embracing what is likely to become the new energy system across Europe and indeed most advanced jurisdictions across the world. And this means, in my view, that we need to value and facilitate the role of storage, electric vehicle assets, broader demand side responsive assets, etc., in terms of their contribution to resource adequacy. And this, therefore, will also be a priority for us as ACER, as we are tasked with, under the Clean Energy Package, on driving a more shared resources approach to resource adequacy across Europe in the coming years. And finally, to close in this quadrant, which State Secretary Kosaruk did not touch upon that much, coming back to this notion of modern security of supply in a wider sense, a complementary aspect here is the cybersecurity of the system. Obviously, this is of growing concern and priority for many, in part because of the increased electrification of the overall energy system, in part because of the increased technological sophistication of threats linked to geopolitical tension. And here we as ACER, we are entrusted with developing a new cybersecurity network code for the electricity system across Europe. This is a big picture item which we are undertaking alongside many different stakeholders over the coming years. Is a new area for us, but also here we are eager to contribute where we can to discussions which will be undertaken by the Slovene Council Presidency. So with that, I will say all in all, there is a lot on the Council Presidency plate. I think Mr. State Secretary Kosaruk would attest to that over the next 6 months. That is, of course, also a privilege. And as the only EU agency in Slovenia, we will do our best to contribute to these priorities where our host country government see an interest in us doing so. We see it as a unique match, if you will, also given our 10-year anniversary coinciding with this Council Presidency. So we look forward to that. And thank you again, Anna, for giving me the opportunity to present some of our focus areas, which hopefully complement the priorities of the presidency. Thank you very much.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Mr. Tinglersen. I think that I hope that the government is quite happy with your support. Is there any short advice for the presidency from your side?
Maybe not so much ACER advice, formally speaking, but personal advice. I used to be a Danish government official in the past where I was responsible for energy policy. And I had the privilege of also leading some presidency discussions many years ago in that capacity. And I think what State Secretary Kosaruk said about being an honest broker and being perceived as that is not only, you know, the good diplomatic thing to say, it's also the right thing to practice. And I think everyone, as I have come to know them in the Slovene government, are pursuing that path. And I think that will stand the government in good stead. It's going to be, well, not only a lot of work on the plate, but also very divisive views. And if you're seen as an honest broker, you have the best chances of getting a good compromise, which I think ultimately will also serve Slovenia well.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Now we have one question from the audience. Mrs. Petra Kandus is asking, what are ACER's plans to incorporate sustainable aviation fuel production in EU as one of the key fuel sources to decarbonize international aviation in the next 20 to 30 years? Do you see any potential for Slovenia and other EU countries which need to close down coal? This is now another question. So first, key fuel sources in the next 20 to 30 years.
Yes, indeed. We don't have much of a role now, or I suspect in the future, in terms of aviation, as it were. We do have some views, shall we say, on the intersection of energy policy with climate policy and the role of the ETS, and that may be, shall we say, indirectly relevant also for the uptake of decarbonization options in the aviation sector and other sectors. Personally, I think that the role of the emission trading system in the EU is on the increase in the future, and rightly so. I think what State Secretary Kosaruk was mentioning in terms of the different colors of hydrogen is one aspect of that, in terms of using the ETS as a driver for decarbonization as opposed to a technology-specific choice. And indeed, if one were to expand the ETS, the scope of the ETS to other sectors, including perhaps aviation, as it were, I think that will be a significant driver. But in terms of the specific fuels underneath, I think we're a bit further away from that specific discussions, you know, whether it's going to be biofuels, and how are they certified, etc. What I would say more generally is I think there is a role for a strong enforced ETS, and perhaps there is a role also for a reliable guarantees of origin type system, not necessarily to drive regulatory preference, but to help facilitate consumer demand or the demand pull in driving new solutions. So if you have a well-trusted, certifiable guarantee of origin system in certain areas, you can rely a bit, in addition to the overall carbon price provided by the ETS, to consumer demand preferences, which I understand are growing in many different market segments. So not necessarily for regulatory preference, but for consumer demand. And indeed, that may also be a way to drive, as a supplementary channel, decarbonization of aviation.
Okay, thank you. And now to wrap up, do you see any potential for Slovenia and other EU countries which need to close down coal power plants to enter this market? Assuming the feedstock is renewable, do you see a potential in carbon credits associated with such production as one avenue for these countries to meet the renewable energy goals?
It's a good question. I definitely see, well, I would say the decarbonization trajectory Europe is on is a massive industrial scale shift. And that brings up a number of new opportunities, and those opportunities will look differently and be appreciated differently from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So Slovenia may absolutely have some possibilities in certain areas of this shift, which could be replicated or look differently in other member states. I know that's a very general comment, but maybe this could be one, drawing on, I don't know, agricultural endowments or other endowments, which may be more prevalent in Slovenia than in competing jurisdictions. In terms of the carbon credit we don't have much work on that at ACER, I have to confess. So if I draw on my past experience in the Danish government and also at the IEA in Paris, where I worked before, I wonder, I say this a bit carefully, I wonder the role of offsetting in terms of getting some of these new sectors going. I wonder how big a role that will play. But that is not an ACER view. We don't have much input into, shall we say, offsetting mechanisms, as it were.
Thank you so much for your comprehensive answer. I hope the participant, Mrs. Kandos, is happy with your answer. Thank you so much, Mr. Tinglesen, for joining us today, for sharing your thoughts on the issue of the presidency and also giving your personal advice. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And now it's time to move to the international partners of Energy Industry Chamber of Commerce. I will now just share the presentation. There are 4 sections within the chamber that have their mother organizations. And we will start now with Eurelectric. The Slovenian Eurelectric section is the oldest one and has been active since 2004. I hope Mr. Christian Ruby is here with us.
Yes, I am.
Oh, great. Nice to hear you. I'm very happy to introduce Mr. Christian Ruby as the Secretary General of the Union of the Electricity Industry, Eurelectric. It's so nice to have you with us. Mr. Ruby has been the Secretary General since 2017, and he joined Eurelectric from Wind Europe, where he served as Chief Policy Officer. Before that, he served as assistant of the former Commissioner for Climate Action, Connie Hedegaard. We all remember her very well. Mr. Ruby, what are Eurelectric's expectations of the Slovenian presidency as the core association of the electricity industry in Europe? What deliverables do you expect, especially with the reference to the Fit for 55 package?
Well, let me start by saying that I think the speakers before me have really outlined well just how exciting this time is and how important a point in time we are at right now. In Eurelectric, we call the 2020s the electric decade because this is indeed a decade where a lot needs to happen, a decade of doing. We need to invest, we need to transform, and we need to expand electricity to all parts of society, and it needs to happen within a very, very short time frame. If we fail with that, the Paris objectives are at risk. If we succeed, we will have a very exciting, a very dynamic, and a very electric decade. So we think this is an immense opportunity for Europe that we're at, but we also urgently request action in order for the necessary decisions to be taken. So with regard to the expectations for the presidency, I would say that of course, as the State Secretary has explained, there's a number of ongoing work streams with relation to the 10E. Here, I would also mention the important work on sustainable finance that's going on and that needs to be advanced. And in addition to that, of course, we hope and expect that the Slovenian presidency will be successful in ensuring progress on the negotiations of the Fit for 55 proposals, even if, as Mr. Kozoroc said, it will be a bumpy road. We realize that. I would say if we could get an overall idea by the end of the Slovenian presidency with regard to the overall architecture of the Fit for 55, the suggested ETS reform flanked with targets for renewable energy and energy efficiency. If we can get a sense that there's an overall alignment, perhaps not a general approach as such, but really an alignment in the Council on this architecture, and then get sufficient progress on some of the flanking and supporting files, for instance, the transport files. I think that would be moving forward in a very good way. And I would perhaps add further to the priorities outlined by Mr. Kozoroc. If we look at, on the one hand, the ambition of a circular economy, and on the other hand, on the climate targets, we see, of course, that here is an obvious overall direction that should be aligned and unanimous. In practice, we see that these rules on these two individual strands of work sometimes contradict each other. So it would be great for the presidency to really watch that closely to see if biodiversity measures start coming in the way of the climate objectives.
Thank you. How will Eurelectric be engaged during the next 6 months, and what are Eurelectric's main policy priorities and key issues to be addressed?
So right now we are in the final talks at the highest level of the Commission. We're meeting with the senior officials and commissioners to hopefully get our views integrated in the package, and that high-level dialogue will of course continue throughout the second half of the year. In addition, we will analyze the package very closely and then issue our recommendations on each of those many files that are foreseen. So we will be in really sort of in detail mode. All our experts will be engaging on the files. And as a third leg of engagement, I would mention that we also intend to bring out some own initiative reports that for us address some of the issues that are currently not foreseen to be part of the Fit for 55. And I would mention one key piece that we're bringing out also in the interest of Christian Sinclairson. We will publish a study on tariff design because we feel that, or we know that the investment needs, especially in the grid space, are absolutely critical to reach the targets. Unfortunately, the current investment trends are not going in the right direction, and that goes for Slovenia as well. And part of this pertains and has to do with the tariff structures. We need to look at them, and we need to make sure that they are aligned with the overall objectives of the policy direction. With regard to our priorities, I would highlight just a few. There is as previous speakers have explained, there is an immense need for build out, especially of renewable capacity in order to reach the climate objectives. Also a build out of grids, as I mentioned, a build out of charging infrastructure. All that requires permits, and we see a huge issue in the industry with delays caused by permits. We say ambition requires permission. If you want to run, if you have the ambition to run a marathon, but you don't get the permission to do it, you're not getting anywhere. So this absolutely needs to be addressed in the Renewable Energy Directive, but also across the board. And here we need a cooperation between member states, between the EU institutions, and the industry will help as well. But without that getting solved, we have a huge issue at hand. Another key priority for us is, of course, to make sure that electrification is really the red thread in this package. We need to modernize the electricity system, and we need to channel that electricity system into the sectors that need to substitute fossil fuels with clean electricity. Transport, buildings, and industry, and we need to see supportive policies to make that happen. Support the infrastructure rollout, support the uptake of electricity, and make sure that these sectors as well have the incentives to decarbonize. A third key issue has also been touched upon by Mr. Kosovac and Mr. Singleton. It's about the frameworks. We believe in a market-driven environment, market-based environment. The basic market rules need to be in place, and we need to make sure that we don't really add a lot of red tape on top of certain technologies. It was clearly mentioned before that the Slovenian plan banks on the expansion of nuclear. That needs to be possible, and we need to avoid that, for instance, sustainable finance rules get in the way of that, or other, let's say, types of regulation. There needs to be that possibility to have access to the full scope of technologies. And the last thing I would say in relation to frameworks is that we see a number of very, very unhelpful national ad hoc interventions into the market. Currently, it's going on in Spain, where the free functioning of the market is threatened. We see that in other countries as well, and this is frankly very concerning. If we don't have the long-term investment signals as a sector, the investments won't flow. The investor confidence will degrade and ultimately disappear. So proper investment frameworks are really very, very key for all this to happen in such a short time.
Indeed. Thank you so much for bringing up all these issues. For example, permitting process it's a really problematic thing in Slovenia. And also, as you say, the proper investment framework is always needed, right? Now, talking about electrification, you said that we must make electrification the red thread through the package for decarbonizing the economy. Where do you see the synergies between Euroelectric and Slovenian electricity industry in this respect?
Well, first of all, I want to say that we have a fantastic cooperation with our Slovenian partners, and I think that what we really see is that often the real efficiency of the policies is tested at national level. Let's take grids, for example. As I mentioned, we need to increase distribution grid investments by 50 to 70% to reach the targets. What's happening in Slovenia for the moment is that actually the level of investments in distribution grids decreased slightly last year because the incentives are not right. And it's only through this close cooperation that we can make sure that we catch these trends that are characterizing the national level. And another key area would be, for instance, permitting, where we basically have to say this will only happen if the EU institutions and the member states together focus on how to solve this issue in cooperation with the industry. So there are many places where we need to work together, and where the synergies between what's going on in individual member states such as Slovenia and what goes on at the EU level is really critical.
Indeed, thank you so much. And since you're talking about so fantastic relationship, I will now call upon Mr. Boris Sovic as the president of the Slovenian Air Electric section within our chamber. Mr. Sovic, are you with us? Good.
Yes, of course.
The floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, and congratulations for this excellent event that is organized by our chamber. I think that we have heard today some very important issues. I mean, Mr. Zinglersen asked, does EU has enough generation, storage, and network to supply demand? I mean, this is the basic question that we are facing it with in Europe at the moment. And it is very important how we will answer to this question. If we start with generation, for example, in Slovenia, as was already mentioned by Mr. State Secretary, we should replace like 2/3 of our existing production capacities in I would say quite near future, because of phase out of coal and because there must be decision about future of nuclear. So this is huge challenge for Slovenia to find a way how to replace like 2/3 of existing capacities. The second question was, do we have enough network, or are our network strong enough? Euroelectric just yesterday released a message from a company called Depsis, and that company analyzed networks in several European countries, and they did it over 5 quarters. So it means like 2020 and 2021. So what they have discovered is, in some new development areas with a large number of heat pumps, grids are being heavily loaded, with some load rates doubling over a quarter. The supply of photovoltaic energy on sunny days in spring has created peak loads at midday at 80% for some transformers that normally use at 40%. They have peaks of only 60% in winter. So in summer, in spring, they had already 80%. And also increasing uptake of electric vehicles and of course charging infrastructure present challenges to the grid, not only in terms of loading, but also power quality that we did not face in Europe like before. So we have serious issues, serious challenges that we must face. And Mr. Ruby clearly said, we need to invest, we need to transform in very short period of time. So for that, we need, I would say, transparent, long-term, predictable regulatory framework. This is, I think, essential. And of course, we need some changes in administration in sense of creating a predictable permitting process. So without that, I'm not sure that whether we can positively answer to the question that Mr. Zinglersen has mentioned. So we are indeed in the electric decade, but it's very important that this will be a decade of stability. I have a fear that if we will not take good decisions and in very short period of time, this can create a decade of instability, of course, also political instability, and I don't think that anybody wants that. I'm speaking about broader Europe because we have seen what has happened in January, at the beginning of January. There was almost collapse of European electricity network because very low temperatures, high demand, difficulties with some production capacities and so on. So this is not something in theory, this is something that we can see very, very often in very near future if we don't act accordingly.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sovic, for your thoughts. Mr. Ruby? Do you have any response to that?
Well, I would just say that it's very true, and it's an aspect that we need to consider when we rely so much on the electricity sector as we will in future. We will start to see this in the 2020s, that more and more we rely on electricity for the critical services in our lives. It's not only about our devices, it's not only about the light in our homes. It will increasingly be about the heat in our homes. It will increasingly be about our transport, and it will be about our industrial processes. So as we rely more on electricity, electricity also needs to be reliable, and this is the sort of a double, let's say, the balance we need to strike. We need to ensure this enormous build out of the clean power, at the same time keeping in mind that only a reliable electricity system will be the adequate backbone for a decarbonized Europe. So keeping that critical dimension of the transition in mind will really be important as we make the plans for the transition.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. Thank you so much both to Christian Ruby and to Mr. Sovic for joining us. We are a bit late, so we will try to hurry up now, because otherwise it will take too long. I already got the message from the MAP Franz Bogovic. Maybe Mr. Bogovic, you can join us now in this moment, because you have to leave exactly at 1 o'clock. And we'll now continue with your short input for this event. Now, I would like to introduce you briefly. You were Minister for Agriculture and Environment. You are an agriculture engineer. And you were also mayor of the town of Krško, where our nuclear power plant is located, for 4 consecutive times. Now, you are a member of the Regi Committee and alternative member of the Agri. I would like to ask you about your view on the path to climate neutrality. Please, Mr. Bogovic.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for organizing this great event. I think it's very in time, and I can say that I fully agree with many topics which were mentioned. From my side, last month, I'm also a member of ITRE, so I'm a little closer to these topics, which I'm very interested in. And as you said, my background is also that I was a mayor in city Krško. It was between 1998 and 2011. At that time, we really worked hardly on these energy topics. First of all, you mentioned nuclear power plant. We find a location for low and medium radioactive wastes in 2009. Unfortunately, the government, which is responsible agency for radioactive wastes, still didn't start to build it, because I think this is the precondition for Unit 2 we spoke about today, and we will speak a lot in the future. At that time, in my region, in region Posavia, we also built 4 hydropower plants. So we have experiences also with renewable energy and this permitting process. And now we see what problems we have with the last one in Mokrice, which is now should be under construction, but we're still waiting for permitting. And I'm sure you showed the case of hydropower plants on Sava, and I'm not so sure that we will build these 10 power plants which were on the map. Perhaps for first 3, it's easier to find the solutions, but I'm a little bit afraid about others. We know about questions about Natura. So I think we are in the decade of revolution in the energy sector. As we heard, there should be lower consumption of energy, but less energy, more electricity. And there will be also big changes of the systems. And if we will continue, if I speak for Slovenia, in such a dynamic like we did in the last decades, no chance to reach these goals. So it means that it will be necessary to first to decide about renewables, hydro, also windmills. We know what problems we have. And perhaps the lessons we learned on the hydropower plant, it was easier to find a location 15 years ago than today. And it's a similar situation in Germany. It was easier to find a location for windmills decades ago, but today it's a big problem, and also the problem for grids. So I think it is necessary to count on all energy sources. This neutrality in technology is essential. Here we speak about taxonomy. Next week we will speak again on ITRE about nuclear, and I hope that as I heard, all these free researchers are in favor that this technology can be used, no harm on environment and other things. So that I hope that we will speak about arguments about technology, not about ideology, because here is a lot of ideology also beside, and I think it's essential that we produce more, not only renewable, but use also the term low carbon energy, what is essential. And I cannot imagine how can we supply enough electricity in Slovenia without installing unit 2 of nuclear power plant. The other solution is big dependence on electricity, which will be imported, and for sure this will be very, very expensive electricity. And we know we got some winter packages also in the supply, and I hope that we will be brave enough, accept decision, and be operational, that we will do this in the field.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bogovic, for your thoughts. You somehow wrapped up everything what we have heard today. Thank you so much, and great success in the future.
Thank you.
We will now continue with our partner organizations, and next is EBICS. And I warmly welcome Mrs. Vlatka Kordes, Chair of the European Forum for Energy Business Information Exchange. She is now with us from Cologne, Germany. Mrs. Kordes and Mrs. Sarkisian are both EBICS Chair. EBICS provides standardized and harmonized processes for the liberalized downstream electricity and gas markets with a focus on information exchange, following EU rules and allowing national customization. The EBICS and the IPET section have established relations since 2010. Mrs. Kordes, can you hear us?
Hi, everybody.
Hi. This is your PowerPoint.
Hi, everybody. I think I have to stop the video. The connection is quite bad today. I hope you can hear me well.
I can hear you very well, and I hope the others also have no problem, so you can continue.
So, yeah, good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation to this seminar, which is quite interesting for EBICS. A lot of topics were mentioned where EBICS is also involved, and also congratulations to your Statehood Day, Slovenia. My name is Vlatka Kordes. As Anna mentioned, Lucy Sarkisian and me are chairing both EBICS. In the next period, EBICS is a European platform where we meet with market participants now for a long time already. So we discuss between DSOs and suppliers and TSOs how we can come to a business process harmonization. Slovenia is now already, so we also have an anniversary to celebrate between EBICS and Slovenia. We are more than 11 years in contact, and 10 years you are a full member of EBICS. So we are still happy and will be happy with you in the future, because our work was also very exciting. We learned a lot from Slovenia, because Slovenia, when you and EBICS started to cooperate, Slovenia was in the opening of the electricity market, which gave us an opportunity to implement EBICS models in Slovenia. So thank you for that. EBICS. What are we doing? We provide harmonized business processes. We do follow EU rules. A lot of them mentioned. We are discussing in our organization. We have more than 13 members, member states organized within EBICS, where we discuss business harmonization from flexibility services to supplier switching, how we can handle metadata, etc. So what we do, we offer implementable core processes, and we also have a technical UML model, which is based on XML schemes or EDIFACT. What we acknowledge from the beginning is that there are still national needs for customization if you are designing business processes. That means we are not adding special stuff from national customization. We have neutral core models, which means if you are using a business process, for example, for supplier switch from EBICS, the core model should be the same in Slovenia, Poland, Sweden, etc. What you can do always when using EBICS and when following our EBICS approach and rule is you can always put your national extras, especially in the downstream market, into the models, and EBICS models will still work. Next slide, please. So our way of working is we discuss business requirements as a basis for harmonization. A lot of things were mentioned today. Do we need maybe a different way how we transport, distribute informations between market participants? How can we share resources? Is it more a local, regional, or national approach? For information exchange, it's quite easy on one hand, because to model an information exchange between partners, between market partners, for example, a DSO and another grid company, or a DSO and aggregator, you need systems. In today's world, without systems, the energy transition and the energy market won't work. So what we use is we have specific data exchange processes. We use as much as possible international and open standards, such as EICS and the SIM model, for example, for a data model basis. We cooperate with UNCFACT in the use of standards. And we work together with all relevant associations, parties, and organizations in the European sector, ENSO-E, ENSO-G, EasyGas, Euroelectric. So we are planning to establish our cooperation with the EU DSO entity in the future, where we work on common topics. Right now, we have a project running where Slovenia is also heavily involved. Is about flexibility services. How can we organize a market model for flexibility? How can we organize data exchange standards, which still leave room for national expertise and national customization? So this is how we work. When you want to find more information on EBICS, you can always look it up in the at the website. I think what is maybe always relevant, EBICS is more or less everything what was discussed today about how can we share resources, how can energy transition go on, what are the next steps, how this new world is financed. When all these questions are solved, then still the question is open, how do we communicate together? And this is where EBICS is providing solutions. So energy transition for us, for EBICS, means that what we have to do is we have to organize all these millions of decentralized market participants, let it be producers, consumers, prosumers, flexumers, whatever you want to call these new market participants, which are needed for the energy transition and for electrification, we have to connect them through information exchange. So in a digitized world and in a reliable energy world, which was also mentioned, we need an even closer, faster, and more secure exchange of data, because everything will be faster. To make energy reliable, you need more information, but always with information exchange, you should be aware information exchange is always delicate. I mean, you are transporting informations, and information should only be exchanged in a proper way to eligible parties who have the right also to get and to receive this information. So what we can do within EBICS is we can offer business processes harmonized between our member countries, which means there is a core process model. Open and international standards are used for data models and also for methods of modeling. And you will also find data formats, which is then maybe the last step to come to a full harmonization. EBICS always sees this. We have several steps. First, make sure that you reach an interoperability between member states. That means have a common ground for discussion for business processes, use a common role model like the harmonized electricity role model, which is broadly used also for NSOE, and also Euroelectric is using it in some of the business processes. This is something where we rely on. And in the end, when you have same information exchange, use also an international open standard, which is already available and exists also in other sectors. Is it only about electrification and information exchange? No, because I heard also mentioning a lot of gas, and the gas package is coming in autumn. When we look towards a customer, and the customer is using a kind of energy, then most of the times the customer is not really interested, am I using electricity or is it gas for supplier switching? For example, if I switch my contract, my supply contract as a customer, I don't care if it's gas or electricity. From me, from customer side, I would like to have the same process for supplier switch. So yes, it's about electricity and electrification, but information exchange always tackles, when we look to the customer side, also the gas sector. So when we use a harmonized electricity role model from EBICS, we always have in mind that there are also gas roles that should be used.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Cordes. Thank you for reminding us how good communication is actually crucial when linking together millions of decentralized market participants. We also wanted to ask you about open international standards and so on, but you covered the topic very well. If you agree, I would now pass the floor to Dr. Blaž Krese, the president of our EPET section, to add maybe a sentence on or two. He is now the newly elected president, and I hope you will continue working very well together for another decade.
Hello, thank you, Anna. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so actually where I wanted to add was at some of the points that Mr. Zinglersen and Ms. Cordes was also talking about, in order to make the transition of the energy systems to renewables and lowering the carbon emissions. I think that it is vital to be aware that this will have to be data driven. So the IPET section that actually actively participates with the EBICS, it is crucial that we have a standardized rules with the additional customizations for each country. So in our case, this is Slovenia. So the IPEC section, actually, the focus of the IPEC section will remain on data exchange protocols and the corresponding cybersecurity systems. This is all in order to support the flexibility services which actually the industry and our customers have the need to. And just to wrap it up, I think that actually data-driven decisions will have to be taken into account in order to reach these goals that were already mentioned several times today. Thank you once again for the invitation and for giving me the opportunity to speak at this conference.
Blaž, thank you so much, and Mrs. Cordes also. I wish you cooperate very well in advance also. And now we have another 2 partner organizations to cover, but we will make a slight change. So we will not continue with the IAEE, but with the World Energy Council, because we know that Dr. Angela Wilkinson is already waiting. Dr. Angela Wilkinson, are you here with us?
I am here, thank you.
Good, so nice to hear you. Now, the Slovenian National Committee of the World Energy Council was established last year in 2020 as a section within our chamber, but before it operated as an independent association founded already in 1992. So the main focus of this section are the activities in relation to WEC, in particular the reports it prepares, World Energy Trilemma, World Energy Issues Monitor, World Energy Resources, and so on. I think we are very familiar with all these reports. And WEC's vision can be defined with 2 words, humanizing energy. So, Mrs. Wilkinson, where do you see synergies between WEC's main policy orientation and strategies and the Slovenian presidency to the Council? What is your key message to the Slovenian industry and the policymakers, in short?
Thank you. I'm delighted to be back, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and World Energy Community members and friends, to Slovenia. Even though it's in the digital space, I've spent many happy years working in Slovenia. I just wish I was there in person. I've been listening to the conversations around many of the technology challenges, phasing out coal, handling nuclear, increasing grid strength, market design, transition and transformation. And my message today, when I talk about humanizing energy, is going to be to encourage the Slovenian presidency to look out and forward, not just in and across the European community as it moves forward its agenda. So, as the 6th Secretary General of the World Energy Council, I'm delighted to congratulate Slovenia on its EU presidency. We're a century-old charity, and our worldwide multi-stakeholder community is open to all energy interests, which now extend far beyond the classic energy industry of energy, power, nuclear, and renewables. Our membership includes European businesses, scholars, regulators, and governments. We have 33 different member communities across the European region. 23 of those are part of the EU 27. We'd like to consider ourselves to be a good friend of the European Commission. And like all good friends, we think it's important to be able to discuss areas for improvement as well as celebrate successes together. And I welcome the Slovenian presidency agenda with its emphasis on green and digital and resilient. It's timely in this pivotal moment for the whole world and well aligns with our community imperative of humanizing energy. So we as the Council drive a global agenda of energy for people and planet. Keeping that "and" is really important. Our 100-year history serves to remind us that we also mustn't forget the lessons that we've learned in eras of energy for peace and energy for prosperity. We highlight that energy transitions and transformations are happening around the world, plural. However, the speed of global energy transition to more affordable and resilient and climate neutral energy remains a concern as climate momentum continues to build and as the COVID crisis has exposed multiple social and environmental justices, including health, energy and digital divides. Now, recovery will not be easy and energy is centre stage. And in this era of race to zero targets, timelines and roadmaps, we focus on the opportunities for managing a more even and balanced pace. We emphasise the difference between pace and race. Our 100-year clean heritage and multi-stakeholder community interests are unique in this regard. We focus on the how-to by harvesting the practical know-how and best practices emerging from all regions of the world concerning energy transitions and transformations for people and planet. We provide impartial assessments on the current state and future outlooks for energy on a global and regional basis. And we do believe we're an honest broker, providing reflections on national performance and interests, including less comfortable geopolitical and socio-political realities. Today, more than ever, we are committed to being impartial and impactful. So we will not advocate for a country, a company, a region, technology, or any solution that is particularly narrow for energy. And we think we have the credibility to call for a sense check on the hubristic advocacy which currently characterises the green hydrogen moonshot, and the courage and neutrality to open a safe space for more honest conversations on some very uncomfortable matters, including the lack of general energy literacy, which contributes to misunderstandings about the energy system, and the need to address big blind spots in leaving no one behind, such as the full cost of transition, the affordability of solutions, and the risk of stranded communities. We're now all operating in an era for energy for people and planet. We share this responsibility and we're very clear. It will take more energy to deliver better lives, a healthy planet, and leave no one behind. We want to support businesses and governments in helping societies understand that all new models of human and economic development, digital, circular, carbon positive, clean and just, regenerative, will require more energy for more people and new uses in coming decades. Better solutions are not green, blue, or any other colour, and net zero or carbon positive solutions are needed to meet the needs of the many, not just the wealthy few. That's why we think there's the need for capital markets to rethink and rebalance the S in the ESG reporting framework, which is impacting the investment flows to energy worldwide. Now, there's an increasing diversity in energy interests, situations, experiences, and perspectives, and it's a reality that's easily overlooked in a context of the growing risk of extreme polarization, of energy good versus bad, of clean versus green. We note 4 global drivers of change are driving and shaping energy transitions and transformations worldwide. We've been talking about some of them in the meeting today. Our drivers are decarbonisation, decentralisation, digitalisation, and disruption by demand. The last driver highlights that the ways in which energy is being used and traded and transported are changing fast and fundamentally. This new pattern of demand-side disruptive innovation is often confused just as the push of cheaper renewable power. But it's more than that. It's about the pull of people and policies, and it directs leadership attention to the need to balance energy security, affordability and equity, and environmental sustainability in the broadest sense. Last week, we held our World Energy Leaders Summit digitally in Tallinn, Estonia, with a focus on the D of digitization in energy. The leadership discussions highlighted that whilst digitalisation in energy has accelerated in response to this crisis and can be a great leveller, it can also be a great divider. The digital divide is accentuating the distance between the haves and the have-nots across all geographies, including Europe. The crisis has been a brutal shock to all societies, and we know recovery is not going to be easy, even with a vaccine. The gaps between the energy haves and have-nots have grown wider and more pronounced in this crisis, and it's visible all across the European region. The new pandemic context of affordability and social justice means that the future of energy is going to be more demanding, quite literally. But too often, we take a completely supply-centric mindset to the solutions that are needed in an era of demand-driven opportunities. We need to expect some permanent destruction of energy demand in some places, but we also need to anticipate the return of global energy demand growth, new users and uses. Our worldwide surveys of this global shock show resilience has been extended to people and communities, and that there's a trend of relocalization of resilience in an era where communities fear becoming stranded. Earlier this month, I completed my first international business trip in 14 months to the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, and I also participated virtually in the Clean Energy Ministerial hosted by Chile and the UN Energy Conversations. And we're just 4 months away now from the UK-hosted Race to Zero COP26 meeting in Glasgow. From my many interactions, it's clear to me that energy transitions and transformations, and I stress the plural, are happening everywhere. And despite the talks of a new era of cooperation, I am concerned by the risk of extreme polarization in the increasingly crowded, fragmented, and global energy leadership landscape. At the World Energy Council, we remain focused on how to, not the battle of should-dos. Race to zero targets involve a change in pace, which cannot be achieved by the push of technologies, only through the pull of connected energy societies, which is why my goal is always to remind us that energy transition is first and always a story of humanizing energy, a story that's bigger than emissions. We are learning to redesign the engine of progress as we learn to fly the plane in uncertain conditions. And this is particularly clear in this new post-pandemic context. Shouting about and waving high ambition roadmaps at each other from mountaintops is never very helpful. A better way is to grow new solutions in the diverse valleys of connected energy societies and by tilling richer soils of cooperation and involving new and diverse energy interests to grow together. So whilst we can't predict the future of energy, our scenarios do say that by 2040, we will still be using a lot of oil and gas. The future of energy will be an increasing diverse local mix of clean and net zero molecules and electrons, and increasing demand by digitally empowered consumers for new solutions to heating and cooling needs. Our independent perspective tells us that carbon capture, utilise and storage will be strongest in a future where global cooperation and coordinated policy actions focus on broader sustainability issues. And our assumptions on hydrogen for 2 to 4% in the global energy mix by 2040 differ significantly from the expensive 5 to 20% range now appearing in advocacy-based and normative scenarios. Our most recent European regional scenarios to 2040 introduce a new policy framework called intelligent subsidiarity. It's key to more effective cross-sector coordination and national urban alignment of policy, and it redirects attention to the human pace in a winner-takes-all digital race. To support energy leaders with the vital task of recovery, we've also developed short-term crisis scenarios called Rewind, Pause, Fast Forward and Re-Record. And last June, we launched the World Energy Transition Radar, and we track real-time signals of recovery, planning and transition actions. The radar provides sobering snapshots of where the direction and pace of global energy transition is actually now in different regions of the world and globally. The most recent snapshot indicates that 2 high transformation scenarios are the dominant signals for the world. They're called Fast Forward and Re-Record. But there are also signals of 2 less ambitious, less progressive scenarios also unfolding. So in this decade of delivery, humanizing energy is imperative to closing the implementation gap. and to activating road building communities. We all know progress is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. And this hard work in translating these net zero targets and timelines into action has only just begun. We know it's important to start with roadmaps, but they need to be well coordinated across multiple levels, issues and sectors. And this policy coherence cannot be achieved without people coherence. A vision-based roadmap of a better energy future is not enough. It needs to be co-created. So we need the pull of increasingly diverse energy societies to increase the pace along multiple pathways. And a more honest discussion of full costs and affordability is pivotal now and urgent in closing the implementation gap. Complex pathways lie ahead which are not visible if we stick with the mindset of prices can only go up or down. The bigger competition in energy is no longer for scarce resources, but for global talent and energy users and uses in a new era of abundance. It's a competition for hearts and hands. Future success rests on active listening, not telling and selling, and effective multi-stakeholder cooperation, which facilitates alignment across multiple sectors and interactive learning, which is up and down, in and out, sideways. Our ambitions can only flourish if we really do pull together. That's why we're looking to redirect attention to demand-driven solutions by enabling people to dwell in humanized energy futures and discover real-life choices and options for themselves. It's our World Energy Community call to action to involve more people, workers, women and future energy leaders, customers, citizens and community cooperatives in humanizing energy to progress these multiple pathways. And we're aiming for a step change in the people capabilities that are needed to achieve these technology moonshot ambitions. Our 3 centenary campaign ambitions are to accelerate energy literacy and to secure 1 billion energy literate people by 2030, to involve more people, including those impacted by transition, in building forward together sprints, and to enable workforce transition by attending to the resilience and investment needed in people. Now, we're actively addressing activation gaps to engage the pull of customers, cities and community cooperatives at scale. And that's why the theme of our St. Petersburg World Energy Congress next year in October 2022 is Energy for Humanity. It takes place a year after UN Energy and the COP26 and will provide an opportunity to showcase the achievements of our centenary campaign in achieving a step change in involving more people and activating and implementing roadmaps for net zero and carbon positive societies. Let me conclude.
Yes, please.
The Commission needs to look up and out as well as in and across as it moves forward with green, clean, digital and resilience. As a small country, yet super rich in terms of diversity, Slovenia understands the importance of moving down from the mountaintops to the multiple valleys to grow inclusive future opportunities. We're ready as the World Energy Council to help you involve the increasing diversity of energy future growers and to manage the pace of multiple energy transitions. It's time for a new and bigger story of energy for people and planet, and humanizing energy is the only place to start. I hope you'll all join us for Congress Energy for Humanity next year. I'm confident it'll be a moment of inspiration, and I look forward to seeing you in person soon, and even better, sometime in Slovenia. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wilkinson, for your honest thoughts and very sincere warnings. Thank you so much. Now I just need to say that we are a bit late. So I hope that our participants still have enough energy to be with us for the next 15 minutes when we will definitely close up. And now I have the floor to Karina Medved-Bregard, the Vice President of the WEC section at the Chamber, for a minute or two intervention. Karina, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Anna. Thank you, Dr. Wilkinson, for outlining the synergies you see between the World Energy Council thinking and its strategies and the future of energy in Europe and Slovenia in particular. In the name of Slovenian National Committee of the World Energy Council, let me also thank Slovenian Energy Chamber for organizing such an excellent event, where actually for the first time all sections can interact and participate together with their mother associations at the same time, especially on such a relevant topic as the presidency to the EU Council. As mentioned, Slovenia and the national section of the World Energy Council is bringing together 12 key energy players in Slovenia and is the youngest section, but nevertheless actively participating within the VEX workstream for years. So just to mention, looking ahead of the World Energy Trilemma Index, which will be published in October, it's a yearly World Energy Council report, and we derive from results in the past years that Anna briefly mentioned already in her presentation at the beginning. We can certainly expect Slovenia to continue with our traditionally good scores in the field of energy security and remain among the top 25% of the world countries. So this means mainly suitable diversity in primary energy supply and electricity generation. And all these points will certainly represent a challenge in the years to come, which was being recognized by all the speakers today. The formal issue of this year's Trilemma report will fall right in the middle of the Slovenian EU Council presidency and thus create a great opportunity to relate the results of this report to the EU member states' energy situation, including Slovenia, and also to the ambitious EU energy and climate agenda. And the World Energy Council, Slovenian section, will of course be happy to contribute to that agenda. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karina, for being very brief. Now I have a question for our MEP, Mr. Groschel. Can we continue with our last foreign partner, or can you stay with us for another 10 minutes?
I can stay for another 10 minutes, no problem.
I can't hear you. Can you repeat?
I said that I can wait for another 10 minutes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so
Okay.
much, Mr. Groschel. So now it's time for our last international partner, International Association for Energy Economics. Unfortunately, the President James L. Smith cannot be with us in person because of the time lag. I think it would be 2 a.m. For him. So I now ask our IT support to show us the video, please.
Greetings and good morning to everyone who's here today for this important meeting. My name is James Smith, and as president of the International Association for Energy Economics, I'm honored to have been invited to speak to you today, and especially to congratulate Slovenia as it assumes the presidency of the EU Council. I regret the circumstances forced me to do this remotely, but even in this new Zooming age we live in, there's still one old element, and that is jet lag, or I should say virtual jet lag. And what I mean by that is that as you watch this, it's about 2 o'clock in the morning in Houston, Texas, which made pre-recording a pretty good idea. Let me begin by thanking Anna and the whole team at the Slovenian Association for Energy Economics for their kind invitation and to acknowledge the important role they play in this meeting today. We at the IAEE are very grateful and very fortunate to have such an active and effective national affiliate working to help guide Slovenia and the whole EU to a better energy future. And I also salute the Republic of Slovenia itself today on this, the 30th anniversary of the founding. Bravo. I hope I hope some of you were able to participate in the IAEE's International Conference, which was held last month with an online format. More than 900 participants came from 62 countries. Dr. Ho-Sung Lee, who serves as chair of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, gave a very compelling keynote address regarding the work of the IPCC, past, present, and future. I was struck by his suggestion that moving forward, it might be a good idea to slightly revise the climate change call to arms, rather than pleading for everyone to save the planet. maybe it would be a more effective plea to save me. The idea is that we might be better motivated to fight climate change if its impact were personalized, rather than being left as a rather general and impersonal proposition. The idea of personal fight against climate change brings to my mind an important distinction between efforts to mitigate climate change through reduced emissions, as opposed to adapting to those effects of climate change that we are not able to prevent. We know that the attempt to reduce emissions really requires many technological initiatives, but that a technical path to success does exist, as documented in the recent IEA's net zero report. Yet that will entail some cost. But cost is not the real impediment to success. People are willing to pay for insurance. They purchase insurance to protect their homes, their families, their possessions. The investments to reduce emissions are just another example of the type of insurance that people really do desire. The problem is about who will pay for this insurance. And the difficulty here comes from the free rider problem. I benefit whether it is you or I who reduces emissions, and I prefer that it's you. A solution to this problem, if it exists, will not come easily. So studies that hope to demonstrate the feasibility of achieving net zero must grapple not only with the technological developments that would facilitate the energy transition, but also with the behavioral obstacles that threaten its success. Now, in contrast, the free rider problem is not such an impediment to adaptation to the effects of climate change. Adaptation involves efforts that are mostly local, actions that involve local expense, but that also produce local benefits. As with other types of insurance, people are willing to pay to invest in measures that will primarily protect their family, their homes, their communities against the effects of climate change. Likewise, communities and states and even nations are willing to invest in measures and programs that will protect the welfare of their citizens. One prominent example of this comes from the Panama Canal, which has recently initiated a $2 billion program to manage and offset the reduction in rainfall and fresh water that's available and required to float ships across Lake Gatun and through the canal. Thousands of similar examples of this type of adaptation could be cited. My point is that there is a behavioral bias that favors adaptation over mitigation when it comes to fighting climate change. I'm not saying this is good. I'm not saying this is bad. I'm only saying that policymakers must take into account not only the technological requirements that could move us toward net zero, as in the IEA's report, but also the behavioral incentives that determine what measures individuals, communities, and nations are willing to undertake. Projections and forecasts that fail to account for the behavioral bias towards adaptation are bound to be wrong. In closing, I want to again congratulate you, Slovenia, as you assume the presidency of the EU Council at this very important time. And I particularly applaud the Slovenian Association for Energy Economics for the vital work they're doing to bring fresh ideas and reason to the many energy and environmental challenges that we face. Thank you. I hope you have a great conference.
Thank you. We are very grateful to Professor James L. Smith for these kind words. And now we pass the floor to the president of the science section, Sara Hezernik, and then to the professor Nevenka Hrvatin. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Hello to everyone, and thank you for this kind opportunity. Firstly, I would like to thank Energy Industry Chamber of Slovenia and IAEE for all support and trust. The Slovenian Association for Energy Economics, shortly SAE, works as a so-called special vehicle, a section of the Energy Industry Chamber on one hand and a small national IAEE affiliate on the other. We work in a great team, and we are connecting different shareholders from industry and other business sectors with academia and those from public institutions. That is also the reason why we are representing SAE today together with Professor Nevenka Hrovatin from School of Economics and Business at University of Ljubljana. Interdisciplinary knowledge and diversity are very important to us, and I'm proud to say that the women now constitute a majority of our membership. We are active in the field of sustainable development through our manifesto of energy economics, or Energy Economics Manifesto, which we launched in 2017 and is now being updated. We have suggested and supported a number of different measures, which we believe will contribute to that, and have organized working groups with aim to achieve goals stated in Manifesto. We also have support of other similar and complementary organizations on Slovenian market. Last but not least, we support development of young experts and students, what brings me personally great pleasure. Thank you. Nevenka, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Today, we heard that there are many challenges in front of the energy world in the energy transformation. And to get the right answers, we definitely need, first of all, research. And the second thing is professional debate. And this both is supported by international organization and our national affiliate, SAE. I would like to say that SAE organizes biannual conferences in Slovenia to disseminate these research findings of students and also all other scholars from academia and other institutions in Slovenia. And in the last conference, we also had active participation from the Slovenian Energy Regulator, Energy Agency, and also EICS. And we also award the Best Student Paper Award at this conference. Also publish the proceedings, which are on our SAE website, and we plan to organize the next conference next year because it was this process was interrupted due to coronavirus last year. The highlight of SAE work is without doubt the organization of the 16th IEE European Energy Economics Conference in 2019 in Ljubljana. It was organized together with the School of Economics and Business University of Ljubljana, and we hosted participants from more than 41 countries around the world. And the conference was fully supported by Slovenian energy companies that are members of the Energy Industry Chamber, and we would like to thank the Chamber again for this. And I would also like to say that Slovenian scientists associated and working with SAE also contribute to the knowledge in the research of energy economics by participating in international conferences and really publishing their results in leading international journals in energy economics. And we also investigate a lot the role of factors influencing behavioral changes in energy use, the importance of which was highlighted in the speech of the IEA President, Mr. James Smith. And of course, I think that Slovenia really needs very professional research and debate and studies covering economic, technical, environmental, and social aspects to really decide on the right energy mix and right energy transition for the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, both ladies, for participating. And now we wrap up with the European Parliament. As announced in the beginning, Dr. Klemen Kroschel is here with us today. He's the former researcher and professor of national and international security, also former Secretary of State at the Ministry of Defense. His focus is a safer environment in every sense for all people. He sees the future of the European Union in its ability to provide security for its citizens and at the same time as being able to maintain internal solidarity. Mr. Groschel is a member of the AFET committee and the alternate member of the ITRE committee. Now, Mr. Groschel, maybe you want to wrap up the whole debate today, or would you like me to ask the final question?
Let's try with the final question. Otherwise, I will talk endlessly and you don't have the time for that. So.
No, we need to wrap up in 2 minutes. Now,
okay.
Next
That's
week.
A lot. That's a lot.
3 minutes, okay, for you. So next week, we are expecting the Fit for 55 package, right? And
yes.
All countries will need to show their ambition in achieving climate goals. How do you see the role of Slovenia here? Can Slovenia, as the presiding country at the time of presenting the package, be key to greater ambition of other EU members? Is this an opportunity for itself to become more ambitious? What do you think?
Since, first of all, good afternoon from my side and good afternoon from Strasbourg. So the first thing which is need to be pointed out, as it was already pointed out by many the participants before me, is that Slovenia will above all need to be a honest broker. So that's one of the very difficult tasks to do. At the same time, it will need to be capable of somehow putting forward the national ambitions and national interest in this sense. So the Fit for 55 or Fit for 2030, as we also call it, is a very ambitious package. So there will be 5 important topics from the political point of view and also from the economical point of view and economy point of view. The first, the dualism between the energy efficiency and energy production. So it's not only about how to increase the production, how to use more renewables, how to define the role of hydrogen, so the role of nuclear energy. This one is one of the most hotly debated topics, and also about the question of the use of natural gas, both the nuclear and also the gas are only transitional energy resources. This means that in the forthcoming financial taxonomy, they will have a special position and they will not be comparable with the renewables. So this will put them in a little bit less favorable position towards the renewables, so that the financial conditions for them will be less favorable. And this means that there will be questions related to how attractive they will be to the investors. Regardless of what we expect in Slovenia, regardless that we are all there is quite huge majority for nuclear option in Slovenia, we need to take into account the fact that this is not the common approach in the European Union. The second one is the fact that traffic and energy are the main contributors of the green gas emissions. So there will be measures which will include traffic and energy, but we need to remember that both of them are closely connected. And Slovenia in this case has that double challenge, because we know that Slovenian emissions are coming mainly from traffic and energy. I think that it's something like 25–40% in both cases. Mm-hmm. So the next issue, and I will try to be really short. So the charging price for the pollution. So there is the carbon border adjustment mechanism, which should replace the ETS system. This will be one huge challenge from the industry, because the question is how we will prevent, and this is the crucial one, the carbon leakage, because the ETS, the free allowances, did allow companies to avoid moving its industry from European area. So the challenge will be how to provide a mechanism which will support industry to have jobs in the European Union, at the same time preventing this, I would say, the carbon subsidies of the third countries, and how to prevent and also at the same time achieve these climate targets. So this carbon border adjustment mechanism will be one of the major issues. Then there is a question of renewable energy production and the sustainability of the electric grid, and also what will happen with the 10E directive, especially with the projects of common interest, especially the so-called future of the fossil-based project. We are talking about the investments in the scope of something like 40 billion euros. And then there is a political issue, the so-called populist backlash. This means that everything which will be done needs to take into account the fact that it should not affect in any way the well-being of the people. And of course, as I said, we need to protect our jobs, not only protect them, but we need to achieve the greater added value, which will make the companies and the whole Europe as such more competitive on the global scale. This is in short, in very, very short, what I was trying to tell.
Thank you so much, because you also raised the issue of the industry in the EU, which I wanted to ask you. So thank you for being very short. And now we are going to wrap up, because we are a bit late already. So what we have heard today is, first of all, about the priorities of the presidency that will focus on sustainability, climate neutrality, energy transition, and circular economy. We have heard that the green is the new black, and that everyone needs to act, and that this decade from 2020 to 2030 is actually a decade for doing things. Everyone needs to act, and that also represents an immense opportunity. We have also heard about the vision of shared resources, of open international standards, humanizing energy, and even that the cost is not the impediment to the success. So I'll now say goodbye to all of you with the next thoughts. Energy is movement, energy is within us, and energy gives us strength. The quote from a child. I'm sure we all have enough strength and wisdom to contribute to a better future for us all. Thank you all for participating.